Forbidden Lands is an original fantasy tabletop RPG by Free League. The lead designer was Thomas Harenstam and main illustrator Nils Gullikson. Other contributors include Christian Graneth, Nils Carlin, Costa Kostelis, and Eric Granstrom. The core rule set of this RPG comes in 2 books, a 265-page Gamemaster's Guide and a 209-page Player's Handbook. The theme is old school fantasy, which makes this Free League's answer to the old school Renaissance or OSR movement that has been underway for several years now. After a read through of these 2 core books, I decided I had to break it down into 2 separate videos. For a breakdown of the Gamemaster's Guide, please click on the link below to my video on that. In this vid, I'm going to go over the Player's Handbook. The authors go out of their way at the beginning of the book, just as they do in the Gamemaster's Guide, explaining what RPGs are and how to play them. You actually see this a lot in core rulebooks, but I did appreciate the sound advice in these books. However, I do wonder how many complete beginners are lucky enough to start their gaming life with Forbidden Lands. Usually, they would start with the ubiquitous Hasbro flagship RPG Dungeons & Dragons, which at the time of this recording is in its 5th edition. If for whatever reason you are just starting out playing or running fantasy RPGs, or if you're coming back from a long break, the What is an RPG sections of Forbidden Lands sets the right tone and the right expectations for the game generally, at least as far as how I like to play. Due to being an OSR product, Forbidden Lands has a classical presentation of races and options. It also contains classic-looking ink art by the superbly talented Nils Gullikson. However, all of it is polished over with a modern clarity and finer aesthetic that you would have never seen in publications from almost half a century ago. For example, with regard to innovation, the player chooses from 8 races: human, elf, half-elf, dwarf, and halfling, as well as orc, goblin, and wolfkin. Playing as an orc, goblin, or wolf person is clearly a deviation from originalism, but these kinds of innovations are an unspoken feature of OSR games. Each of the races have 2 unique features, a key attribute and a talent, and they are each described in strangely dark and adversarial tones. The hatred and disdain that each race has for another or for themselves is really rather heavy, but this is simply the nature of Forbidden Lands. There are 8 classes or professions to choose from for your character. Each of these 8 contains a key attribute as well as certain skills. The book also offers examples of a point of pride, a dark secret, and a key relationship. The pride statement for your character actually functions as a once per session bonus D12 to add to any roll, as long as it pertains to the situation that calls for the roll. If you fail a pride roll, you permanently lose that pride statement and must create another one at the next gaming session. There's actually not much else offered on each class besides this and a bit of flavor text. The book's brevity in this section gives the player quite a bit of room to breathe. Your core attributes are strength, agility, wits, and empathy. If you've watched my review on Free League's science fiction RPG Coriolis, you'll notice these are the same attributes as that game. You get either 13, 14, or 15 points to distribute amongst your 4 attributes, depending on your age. The max is 4 at the start for any given attribute, but if your race lists it as a key attribute, the max is 5. And if your profession also lists it as a key attribute, the max is 6. The game of Forbidden Lands offers 16 skills, each with a level of 0 to 5. You get a certain number of skill points at the start to spend on leveling your starting skills depending on your age. Many of the skills like might, move, endurance, and sleight of hand are self-explanatory and don't have any additional mechanics. But some skills, such as crafting and performance, have much more nuance and detail for when you succeed. Talents are also assigned by your kin and profession, and you can pick up 1 to 3 extra talents depending on your age. There are 8 kin talents, about 3 talents for each profession, and 48 general talents. The talents themselves are ranked 1 to 3. Every rank for every talent is explained in the book, and this aspect of your character is a large part of how they level up, so to speak. Forbidden Lands provides a questionnaire for the end of the gaming session to help the assessment of how many experience points a player is rewarded. Questions like, did you find treasure, and did you suffer from your dark secret? There are 10 questions in total here, and it's not an exhaustive list of questions, but I did find it a good way to gently guide players, new and old, into trying to play a tabletop RPG in a way that maximizes the fun, to get them thinking about actual roleplay and teamwork. You then spend XP on improving skills and talents, Thus, there are no character levels in this game, only levels of your various abilities. Forbidden Lands uses a dice pool system. For most of your rolls, you use a d6 to resolve the issue at hand. When using a skill, you add the skill's level onto the base attribute score, along with any bonuses you might have from gear or items. That's how many d6s you get to roll to test that skill. 1 6 means you were successful. Multiple 6s on a single roll will trigger added positive effects depending on the skill. After your first roll, you can also push to re-roll all dice that are 2 through 5, wherein rolling a 1 here will earn you a negative effect depending on which die comes up with a 1. Getting a 1 on a re-rolled base die will actually damage your attribute. This is one of the main ways of taking damage, but for each of these you will also earn a valuable willpower point that you spend to use talents and cast spells. You can also have artifact dice, which represent magical or incredibly rare equipment. For mighty artifacts, you'd roll a d8 instead of a d6, where a 6 and 7 are a success, but an 8 counts as 2 successes. An epic artifact affords you a d10 to roll, where chances of multiple successes are even higher. And a legendary artifact will give you a d12 to roll, where if you manage to roll a 12, you earn 4 successes. You'll notice that I'm showing some fancy dice here. These are Free League's exclusive Forbidden Lands dice, color-coded and stamped with Bane skulls and success crosses. If you're richy rich, you should definitely pick up a few packs of these to make for a premium Forbidden Lands experience. Otherwise, you can just use d6s of different colors. There are a number of additional mechanics for rolling to check a skill, including group rolls, modifications based on situation difficulty, assist rolls, and the like. Initiative and movement in Forbidden Lands is fairly conventional. You get 2 fast actions, or 1 slow action and 1 fast action per turn. A slow action would be something like the slash of your sword or a stab or a kick. A fast action would be a dodge or a preparatory rearing of a heavy weapon. The authors inserted a card minigame for close quarter combat. Basically, you draw a hand of 7 cards against your opponent and then play out a series of steps involving different premeditated combat moves. This is an interesting way to sell more merchandise, and it could certainly create a unique combat experience, but there is the concern that it would slow down the flow of the game at the table. Ranged attacks are done well in the book, including rules for penalizing a ranged attack that is too close. I have to say, I really appreciate the list of weapons and armor in this book. The stats are simple, and the lists don't go on and on. They really do cover all the basic form factors of medieval gear and don't get lost in the weeds. Remarkably, versions of every standard weapon are beautifully drawn in the style of the human as well as the orcish, elven, and dwarven aesthetic. Damage is somewhat complex in Forbidden Lands. Instead of hit points, depending on how you fail your roll or receive offense from an enemy, your stats or armor can take damage directly. Attributes and gear can reach 0, at which point they are considered broken. Running out of strength or wits leaves you vulnerable to death, since you then have to roll on the critical damages table. You can roll for healing to recover attribute points, and for gear you must roll a repair skill, or perhaps seek a smith. Magic in Forbidden Lands is presented as 4 disciplines of sorcery and 3 disciplines of druidic magic. Spells are only learned by persuading a druid or sorcerer to teach you those spells through persuasion and the payment of much silver. Otherwise, you have the option of paying in triple the cost in XP. There are 68 spells in Forbidden Lands across the 7 disciplines. Due to the mechanics involved, spellcasting is expensive, dangerous, and rewarding, usually all at the same time. Every cast is considered an automatic success, ranging from mishap to triple overcharge, but you have to spend willpower points for every d6 you will use to cast. Remember, you get willpower points by failing a push roll. A very strange economy indeed. Forbidden Lands comes with a hex map broken into 10 kinds of terrain. The terrain is referenced to determine how hard it is to traverse through. You are hemmed inside this wide expanse known as the Forbidden Lands, a land that was formerly the exclusive domain of elves and dwarves living in harmony until humans arrived and waged war to set loose a centuries-long demon-fueled chaos that only recently started to settle. Movement at the hex level has its own set of mechanics. Every quarter day, your party can choose to conduct one of about a dozen activities, including hiking, making camp, fishing, exploring, etc. Some of these activities incur penalties or bonuses depending on the terrain you're in. Every character in the party has a role in the hex journey. One person must roll a lead the way roll every quarter day, while another is tasked with rolling a keep watch check. Someone might be tasked to roll a hunt, fish, or make camp check if that is what the party is deciding to do. Every type of activity has the potential to fail, and a failed roll leads you to a dedicated mishaps table for that activity. Finally, there is the Stronghold. At the time of this recording, the notion of player characters owning and maintaining strongholds has come into vogue. Forbidden Lands allows for PCs to buy, build, or capture a stronghold of their own. Having a stronghold can confer the following benefits: rest and sleep undisturbed, gain willpower points, or host a variety of functions. You'll have to worry about upkeep and the natural resources to keep up with any of the 21 core functions of the place, such as forge, a gallows, a library, or an inn. Then of course you need to make sure that you pay your hirelings who staff the place. Regarding hirelings, there is an entertaining table that you have to roll on if you are not able to pay them on time. Defending against sieges on your stronghold is handled with a few short tables in the book, and generally, the guidelines on strongholds in this book are light and general. Taken as a single product, the Forbidden Lands core rulebooks are a refreshing take on an old classic. The two books are full of classic style art, but with breathtaking sharpness and clarity. The rules are relatively light, and despite the attempt to get you to buy special dice and cards, you can probably very easily bring this game to your table with what you have on hand. The hex crawl mechanic, which reminds me a lot of Free League's Coriolis ship's crew mechanics, where everyone has a job, is a great way to handle traveling the map between actual adventure sites. All of the essentials, the GM's guide, the player's handbook, the map, and more can all be found at Free League's website. I've added the links below. Let me know what your experience has been with this game. And thanks as always for watching. This is Dave, signing off. See ya!